Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This episode is very important. We will discuss on digital Hollywood. It's a huge popular thing in Asia Pacific, especially our youth communities, our students, our uh, mm, like our peoples. They have a huge interest about Hollywood, and we have our very expert panelist. We have our famous, world famous speaker, Professor David Smith from USA. We have our very, very big guy from Hollywood, Mr. Homestoners. He is a chairman of Pacific Rim Business Council. He has big contributions in movies and media, so our youth community can learn many interesting things. We have our world famous speaker, very famous speaker, Professor Rob, and we have our friends, our colleagues who always love to contribute for World Talent Economy Forum, Mr. Adam. I just want to share with you very, very good news. World Talent Economy Forum. We are launching Nikola Tesla Technology Conference this April, and many, many big university. Most of the cases I told that the big countries, the big corporation always avoid this kind of universities, and the big communities they have around 200,000 students. Dhaka University, Buet, Asanullah University, Daffodil University. They collaborate with World Talent Economy Forum for this conference. So your contribution will be very, very helpful for our community. Professor David Smith, what you want to share about digital Hollywood?
Well, Sharif, thank you so much for allowing me to be on the show today. You know, digital Hollywood's a fantastic concept, and we must realize that the digital Hollywood concept is a global concept. And, you know, if you look today, the computer industry, manufacturing, transportation, many others are not alone in this age of digital transformation. You know, beyond the expected enterprise users in the film industry, where modern computers really changing how they're doing it, we're seeing the transformation in the industry from almost 100% film to 100% data, so 100% digital. Um, and we see that going in every type of program. I mean, we're there. We're also seeing the distribution channels change dramatically. Um, you know, we're seeing the streaming media growth going. We're seeing the means of distribution change. You know, I cannot remember the last time I bought a DVD to watch a movie with. We've changed that paradigm almost totally as we look at the different applications. Now, we're also seeing, though, that when we are in the brick and mortar theater side, it has also transformed to almost entirely digital projection, and with the changing nuances around that. Um, and so as that has changed, other parts of the industry has changed as well, too. We see that production, post-production, has very rapidly changed to digital. I remember back when I was in college, and I still have my splicing block somewhere from splicing audio tapes together to make corrections in the studio, to actually singing film together as we made edits on the rollaback in film class. In our video classes, all of our productions were done on 2-inch videotape. Boy, those were the days where you did not have the flexibility you have today in the digital Hollywood concept, and ones which are really changing how we're looking at. The biggest impact I see as we've changed to more worrying about data. And data is really what digital Hollywood is all about, is it's leveled the playing field for so many people. The indie filmmaking industry, the indie music production industry and everything have dramatically taken off because I can produce, I can edit, I can distribute the content all on the technology I have on my notebook in many instances. And we're seeing the place where digitalization has dramatically expanded the digital Hollywood concept in game production, and the metaverse is going to be a place where you're going to see more and more of that. And we're seeing it change how people are looking at budgets for producing it. We're seeing that even frame rates and things are changing as we can scale up resolution in the digital world. That was not possible when we were in the analog world, in the film world. And for example, with the new version of Avatar coming out and being released, at least here tonight in Austin, is that technology that made Avatar wouldn't have been possible 25 years ago because without the power of modern computing, it lets us go deeper and deeper into levels of imagination that we have with programs like that. So there's many differences here. I can tell you my undergraduate degree was in radio, television, and film. And boy, if I walked into campus today, what we learned back then is nothing like what is learned today. You know, we had on one floor of this education complex, room after room after room after room of analog audio editing facilities and recording facilities. We had floors of television studios because you could not take the cameras out and do things. In our film operation, you saw students checking out $50,000 cameras to go and film with, which today you don't see that type of things anywhere around. And the post-production process has gotten so streamlined in the digital transformation. It's so easy to do, and the creative opportunities are so great. So as a quick introduction, Sharif, I think this is probably a good place to stop, but the market is booming there, and the opportunities for independence and production globally are just fantastic today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Homestoner.
You're muted.
Mr. Homestoner, can you hear me?
You're muted. There you go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you unmute?
Well, I came up through the ranks of radio and television back in the, I hate to say it, in the 1980s. And as David was saying, I'm an analog person. I grew up with analog. Basically, all the content was analog. We syndicated in analog. And then all of a sudden, the digital revolution comes along, and we have digital Hollywood that is exploding at unprecedented rates, where we're seeing streaming channels, 10,000 streaming channels, where we used to have 100 cable stations. And they're exponentially growing. All the content has to be digital because they're all digital formatted. So what you're seeing now is just the beginning. And I don't know where it's going because I'm old school here, and I'm trying to learn as fast as I can. But what I'm seeing now is things breaking into the metaverse, where now you're invading video games and putting advertising in every nook and cranny that you can find. And it's a new universe. It's hard for me to understand, but I'm trying my best.
Thank you, Professor Rob.
Well, digital Hollywood is kind of an interesting topic. One part of what makes it interesting is it's sometimes hard to know what you're using the term for. So, Digital Hollywood is actually an agency out in New York that does acquisition of actors and matches actors and other workers up with programs. Digital Hollywood is a segment in CES. You'll see that again next year. They've had speakers ranging from folks from the film industry, often actors, to leaders of tech companies. And of course, digital Hollywood is also refers to the current trend of digitizing the movie experience. So I'm going to focus on the latter. What's been kind of interesting as we've moved through digital Hollywood, and I think my first instance of digital Hollywood was the Last Starfighter movie years ago, where it was one of the first movies, I think actually the first major release movie that used exclusively green screen. That was followed by Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, which was much more extensive, but still had that cartoonish flavor to it. And then, of course, we move into today's world where Marvel movies or whatever are heavily done with green screens. But the problem often is it's not easy to act against a virtual environment. They often have to dress other actors up in prosthetics. And so that the primary actor has something to act against. The monster may be another actor with a monster head and a bunch of motion trackers that they're acting against. And then most recently, they've moved to LED walls. LED walls are kind of interesting because it puts the actor in the environment, and so each wall is a massive TV screen. And then the TV screens are switched on, and suddenly the actor is in the environment of the film. Now, it's still not that realistic because you're dealing with LED walls. But you get a T-Rex coming at you that's 45 feet tall, and it looks like it's 45 feet tall from your perspective. You're going to look startled, and it's going to be a realistic reaction. I'm seeing some of that stuff. I'm kind of surprised the first time some of these people have seen these LED walls, why people don't go run screaming from the room. Because it does convey the kind of fear that you want. But we're still at the front end. We still have virtual reality to go, and the traditional issue with virtual reality, and you could place the actor in the environment with virtual reality, but you'd have to digitally remove the headgear because nobody's going to want to watch a lead actor running around a set with VR headgear on. You want to see the actor as the actor, and blending the real action with a rendered component has been a little iffy. We've certainly seen it attempted over the years when they reverse age an actor and have them play somebody that's younger. We saw that in several of the Marvel films where they've taken an actor that's older and made them look substantially younger, but they don't look real. And the Mandalorian, where they brought back Skywalker, Luke Skywalker as a younger Skywalker, had him play it, but his face and body were his younger face and body. It was just a little bit on the wrong side of the uncanny valley, and uncanny valley is what the industry has used to talk about this no man's land between animation that looks like animation and animation that looks like people. And when you have animation that tries to look like people and doesn't quite make it, it's disconcerting. It's not attractive. It feels weird. The individual, the actor, appears on stage as someone that's not quite realistic, and it's disconcerting. It's not what you want to see. So the conventional wisdom right now is you want to be on one side or the other of the uncanny valley. Animation's fine, and reality's fine, but you don't want to be somewhere in the middle where it's hard to tell whether the character on screen is animation or real, and that's what you want to avoid. Now, current technology is getting to the point where we can now create photorealistic avatars, and we're making it cheaper. And when you see Avatar the movie, and when it comes out, you're going to see the current generation of this technology, and it is photorealistic. At least from the previews I've seen, while you know full well it's animation, it looks real, and it's not uncomfortable. It's not like the Sony films of a few years back where everything was clearly also animation, and you kind of could tell, but again, that facial expressions weren't right, the physics wasn't right. It just didn't engage you as Avatar 2 will likely engage you, and so we're getting to a point where it's getting really good. Some of the other, if you ever watch any of the Dust films on YouTube, and I'm a big fan, they've gotten a lot better over time too, where the blending of animation and real action has become so good that it's pretty hard to tell the difference. And that's low budget. And that's really the goal here, is really use this digital technology to allow movie creators to develop content at a far lower cost than a movie studio would incur for a similar level of quality. And once we get to that point, we'll open up the world of animation. And of course, the very latest is using AIs to do everything from writing the script to creating the film. NVIDIA has now demonstrated that in prototype form, and it's good. It's not production quality good yet, but it does showcase you can do everything from the music to the script to a lot of the animation, to a lot of the animation work with the AI, particularly when you're talking about very real animation, where you're connecting the elements. Because it used to be with animation, an animator, an artist, had to draw every single frame that was created. Now you don't. Now you can draw a frame and maybe draw every 10th, 20th, 100th frame, and then the AI creates the motion between the frames. So it creates a realistic movement. The AI generates the interleaving elements, and so it reduces the animator's time quite a bit when you move to rendering, and so that again allows for workstations rather than large server farms to be able to do a lot of the work that used to require millions of dollars of equipment, and equipment that costs still thousands of dollars, but certainly much more approachable for a much smaller firm, and sometimes even approachable for well-funded individuals. And so digital Hollywood in its final accentuation will be the ability to really allow somebody with a very reasonable budget to bring their story to market and be able to tell it in a very compelling fashion. And we're getting there. We're probably a decade away from what I would call a major breakthrough. I did one of the few science fiction stories I wrote was called Dreamweaver. And this was a concept of where because we have a science fiction author every once in a while on here, and my science fiction writing is fairly limited, just a handful of short stories. But in this case, what I progress. And by the way, my science fiction story was part of a concept called science fiction prototyping, where you take somebody that writes science fiction and you give them a concept of what the world might look like, say 10, 15 years out. And then they write a story based on what's known about the progression of technology to surface how these technologies would interact and what would then be the real world. And that science fiction prototyping is used heavily by the Department of Defense to anticipate future problems in the warfield, and it's in warfare, and it's also used to progress or to create ideas about products that the market may need 10 to 15 years out, because a lot of times those products are going to take 10 to 15 years of development. So you actually have the product when the market needs it, as opposed to starting to develop the product when the need is identified and then being late to market. So in the end, the progression here of digital Hollywood is going to allow a lot of people that otherwise couldn't afford to get engaged with this kind of creation to get engaged and open this market to a lot more creators and allow them to do some really amazing things. And there's some dovetail efforts with regard to this as well that include making Zoom meetings better. The idea of being able to step into a Zoom meeting and Levi's and a t-shirt, kind of like I'm dressed right now, but appear in a suit. Or a woman to appear without makeup, but on the Zoom call look like they're fully made up, or even de-age yourself real time by restoring some of your youthful features. And as long as you're always on Zoom calls, maybe nobody will ever know. But those are all concepts that are flowing through here. So there's broad applicability outside of just Hollywood in terms of how people interact and collaborate. And a lot of the same things that are being done in movies are being done for collaboration tools that allow you to collaborate in some of these environments and interrelate in things that are increasingly realistic. We're still working through the haptic and some of the other things in that environment, but they'll all cross over. And so at some particular point, you'll be able to put an actor in a scene and they'll feel the reality just the way the audience said. That's the reason I got out of acting, is I realized early on that if I got into acting, I would no longer enjoy TV or movies, because I'd know how the magic was created. It's like being a magician. If you're a magician, you're not going to be fascinated by magic anymore because you're going to know it's a trick. I mean, you know it's a trick. I mean, and you know the trick was done, and so the wonder, the excitement goes away. And for me, a lot of my enjoyment really came from watching movies and TVs and imagining myself in those environments. And I realized I was losing that as an actor. That's coming back in the future, where you'll be able to put an actor in the scene. And same thing for somebody that's playing a video game. Drop an actor in a scene or a video game player in a video game, and you'll feel like you were there. That's going to do some really awesome things with regard to realism, and it will allow actors to experience the event as if they're there. And I think we'll restore a lot of the magic, or at least not simply restore, put magic back into acting. Because a lot of us were kids, we think we want to act as Superman or Batman or whatever, and then you see how it's done, and yeah, that's not going to be your experience. You're going to be learning lines. You're going to be repeating them multiple periods of time. You're going to be playing in front of a green screen or with props, and all of that is just massively distracting and takes away from the experience. And so it's not enjoyable. So you're making a lot of money, but the exchange is you're losing all the magic. And my view is once we finally get this cooked, we'll put the magic back into movie and filmmaking and increase the magic in game playing and really create a world where everybody's enjoying the content. And in many cases, we'll blur the lines between the audience and the actors and allow for co-participation in a new class of content in massive multiplayer game type environments where it's going to be hard to tell the difference between the movie and the game because everybody's in it. So we're looking at an amazing future as this advances.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Thank you. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I think Hollywood is outdated now. I think we have outgrown Hollywood as a product, as an institution. I think it has been revealed as a corrupted cesspit of suffering where abuse is rife, sexual abuse, drug abuse. The classic metaphor of the meat grinder that chews people up and spits people out. Classic example of this is the Weinstein case, and former child stars like Corey Feldman are coming out years later as adults to reveal how they were abused as child actors and actresses by executives, handlers, directors, and so on. Next, I do think the magic of Hollywood and maybe films as a whole have lost a lot of their magic. One thing that always struck me is the changing color tone in color schemes between older films and more modern productions. Movies from the 50s, the 60s all had this dazzling Technicolor brilliance, whereas now movies have this very dull, very muddy color scheme. A good example of this is the 1978 Superman starring Christopher Reeve and the modern remake starring Henry Cavill that came out a few years ago. The 1978 version still had a vibrant, rich visual tone. Superman's cape was red, really red. His blue outfit was really blue. The Henry Cavill one was much less dazzling. And why filmmakers are doing this, I have no idea. And that is another factor. Hollywood just churns out remake after remake after remake. So those are two factors which have helped to suck all the magic out of movies for me, unfortunately. Remakes and CGI. Again, films like Superman from 1978 still use practical effects compared to the CGI employed heavily in modern movies, remakes or otherwise. And the other speakers mentioned the whole analog versus digital tension. I was born in 1989, so I grew up in the 90s still watching TV and film that still had their original characteristics intact for digital remasters before smartphones and social media and the like. So I was still watching, as young as I am, even I was still watching films in their original formats and characteristics, complete with, Ray Harryhausen stop motion animations, pops and crackles under the artifacts from real film, some of which has eroded over time, telesign wobbles, practical effects and models, because I watched a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, which you could, I suppose, date more than other genres because of all of their of-the-time special effects. But that infused the film and the viewing experience with magic, with the soul, very similar to how audiophiles prefer to listen to vinyl and even cassette tapes over MP3s and digital downloads. And I enjoy electronic music that was made using analog synthesizers and effects recorded to tape rather than music made on a laptop. And I can tell the difference. And so it's the same with watching movies. Again, like with Star Trek, the original series, I would much prefer to watch the originals with their original special effects and models over the remastered versions where they shoehorn CGI into every episode. But as I said, I think Hollywood is dying. CGI remakes and wokeism are killing it. Like Tim Burton, he's getting heat right now because his movies are cast with more white actors than wokeist critics would like. And it's getting to the point where even non-white people are getting sick of wokeism and the anti-white messages in movies, not just white moviegoers. So with regards to Hollywood again, a lot of really great movies were made outside of Hollywood, like Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson, Star Wars as the originals as well. So I think Hollywood and all the suffering and abuse that forms a part of this machine should be maybe abolished and make way for better, more ethical, creative institutions. Thank you.
Captain Future, I think you're up. Dr. Sharif is gone for a moment.
It's gone. His internet's gone down. Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about or what the question is because I was late.
You're talking about digital Hollywood.
Digital Hollywood, okay. What comes to mind? So I'm connected with what you said before. I'm super excited about Avatar coming up next week for the premieres at least, and like you also mentioned, like we have it's super exciting to see if they get beyond the uncanny valley, because before that I really like both in movies and TV series and computer games where you don't try to do photorealistic. I loved like Arcane, the TV series last year on Netflix. Super great when they do that kind of animation, and for computer games I really love of course the game Arcane is built on League of Legends. They don't try to do photorealistic, they have this cartoon style thing, and but for me, like both Avatar and Arcane is the reason I love them, and what they do that so very few shows and movies do today. They add real narration and world building of the world we live in and the problems we're facing. And it's so sad to see like the commercial machine in so many cases stray from the mission, what storytelling and narratives really is. It's not about entertainment or making money. Storytelling has always been about conveying meaning and learning to humans around a campfire for hundreds and thousands of years. And I think like the discussion of what we can use digital tools for now that there's so much opportunity and with our tools and usefulness, we have to have the real discussion. What do we use it for? What do we use our time for, both on Netflix and the time we spend on social media and even in the workplace? I see the lack of that, and I'm a big fan of the whole world round. If I don't know if you know about John Bevicki from Toronto University, he's coming out with a new YouTube series now in January about wisdom, and I've been following him since Awakening from the Meaning Crisis came out in 2019. I don't know if you're familiar with John, but go check him out on YouTube. And it's our search for wisdom. Where is the wisdom? Where do we go for wisdom? That's the tagline for the new series. So I'm super interested. How do we convey wisdom in our narratives? And of course we have to bring people in with the magical of wonder, like movies and TV series does. So we shouldn't stray from that. I think the combination, The Matrix was the perfect example. You brought action, meaning, and wonder together. And so many movies still today didn't get the memo of this is how we do it. But at least some are still doing it, and that's what I'm feeling right now. So.
Thank you, thank you. I am inviting you for the second round of the discussion. So, what is your advice if anyone want to establish their career in film and media? And second things, like what type of new technology, the emerging economy, they can integrate or they can develop their skills. What is your advice, Professor David Smith? And I request all of the panelists, you can discuss. And second thing, I am in emerging economy right now. We have a lot of internet problem, lot of issues, so I am struggling a lot. I'm sorry about that. I'm really sorry about that. If I am not available, please continue this discussion. Professor David Smith.
Well, Dr. Sharif, thank you so much. I mean, the struggles you're at the digital transformation has impact many different digital transformation is the infrastructure, and the fact that as more and more goes digital, our infrastructure is stretched thinner and thinner. Your question is an interesting one. Here in Austin, Texas, we have South by Southwest coming up in a couple of months. And I've been an innovation judge at South by Southwest now for 16 years. And I'm speaking on one of the panels this year again. And the South by Southwest is all about digital entertainment, digital films, music, and digital media as we look across it. And the pace of change is just dramatic. We will have at South by Southwest this year over 125 panels and speakers talking about this transformation. There will be over 300 bands in place, and there will be screenings of probably about 125, 150 films if this year's follows the same numbers as we've had the last year. And so you're seeing digital Hollywood, and I'm using digital Hollywood as digital entertainment. It is continuing to grow and expand. Again, I'm going to talk locally here. We have 3 new digital sound stages going in the Austin area to support growth in productions. And so the growth of productions, both from traditional production houses and indies, is growing. You know, we see Warner Brothers here, we see Lionsgate, we see quite a few others, Paramount, Disney. They all have productions underway within the area around Austin today. So the digital entertainment production area is growing leaps and bounds. As I had said in my initial remarks, one of the benefits of this transformation to digital production, digital delivery, is it's lowered the cost. And it's lowered the dependence upon being in production centers. I can remember the first blue screen, green screen I did. The chroma keys back then really were not very good. You couldn't really move. The lighting had to be severe. Today, I can do that very easily across and bring the effects in. I produced some of the first, my team produced some of the first 3D animation that was done digitally in Austin. And it was on computers and editing equipment that at that time probably cost $500,000. I can do much better animation than that today and render it and deliver it on a $3,000 notebook. versus what we did back then with a 1-inch video tape recorder that could record without pre-rolling, and off of a Unix-based networked workstation. So dramatic changes. Even production of audio. I have on my notebook 32 tracks of audios I can set and use anytime. I remember producing audio programs, again, on 2-inch audio tape, where to get one effect, we actually flipped the tape over and recorded backwards to get the effect we needed for the animation we had. I can do that all digitally today with no problems. And to me, that makes this available pretty globally. And with the not thousands, but the tens of thousands of distribution channels you have now, it makes it once again very easy for people who want to be creative, for people who want to distribute their results and things, to do it in a low cost, and in some instances, no cost area. A couple of the areas I'm judging this year in South by Southwest Innovation Awards is we're seeing a growth of software programs, both there and I'm on the investment committee for the International Accelerator in the United States. I'm seeing more and more software to aid in this type of production, this type of distribution, this type of managing your distribution, managing your locations, how to pay everyone. And seeing this explosive growth of software tools to support a digital Hollywood, a digital entertainment, is telling me that the market is really in an upswing. And if I were to go and plot this on a traditional Fisher-Price curve, we're probably at about a 20% to 35% market penetration with a lot of room to grow and continue. But I think that's mine. And Homer, since Sharif is still gone, why don't you go ahead and pick up next?
Well, I'm just listening to what you're saying, and it's ringing through my ears here because I've had all the same kind of experiences in the fact that I used to own a television channel here in Los Angeles, and we had millions of dollars worth of equipment stacked up all over the sound rooms and the video rooms that now are no longer necessary. We can't even sell it for scrap.
I know.
It just nobody wants it. And then you have the opposite side in the fact that now you can almost produce for free what it cost you millions of dollars to do before. And so you've got this avalanche of content producers that are doing it on their Avids in their living room. Okay. And they're basically now flooding the market with content, this digital content, to the point where it's difficult to even sort it out or even to classify it because you just got too much of it. And I'm the chairman of the Asian Film Festival over there. We're having next week here in Los Angeles. When we started this 5 years ago, our entries, our digital entries of all of the films that were produced around the world from China to Singapore, we had 140 some odd films that were submitted. This year we have 1,715. So, I mean, the content is just growing by leaps and bounds, and the streaming channels are growing by leaps and bounds. I just don't know where it's going. I can't get my arms around it. I just can't, and then you add in the metaverse, where you're just going to be in every video game on the planet. And how do you put your arms around all this? It's just, nuclear fission, if you will. I don't know, and I depend on guys like you guys who have been in the business, the film business, all your lives, to kind of give me a little guidance here, because I don't know what to do with it.
Well, not about being in the film business all our lives. I started off in acting and years ago, and I've had a couple TV shows over the years, but more as talent than as operational management or production. But that Sharif's question focused on what you would do to kind of get ahead of the curve. You're doing it now. You don't start a project like this by on the technology side. You start it on the production side. You've got to understand the medium first. You have to understand distribution. Those things to a large extent are also under flux, but because we have streaming, and certainly 20 years ago we did not. So the method of getting the content to market's changed an awful lot, as has the funding. You can now get paid for putting content up on YouTube, and people make a relatively decent living doing that. Though there is an awful lot of risk, because all it takes is YouTube to change their algorithms, and suddenly that income that you used to get goes away, and YouTube can effectively fire you if you put up content that they don't agree with. You're suddenly unemployed, and they're not held to the same employment conditions that a typical employee is held to, or a typical employer is held to in that regard. In other words, they just have to decide to pull the plug and do it. Now, understand a lot here in the United States. A lot of states do allow the firing of employees without any preamble either, depending on the underlying contract. But often actors and entertainers do have contracts. Even extras can have contracts now, and there are unions that cover both, which assure that those underlying concepts are in place. Those union rules and protections don't exist for folks that are creating digital content at the moment. So you're not in a union if you're producing for YouTube or for any streaming platform, or even if you're doing in-game streaming, Twitch streaming, same kind of thing. You're in effect, you are talent, but you are talent without the protection you would typically get as talent. And so understanding some of the risks involved is also important, because if you have an idea that you're going to develop a career as an independent streaming content creator, just recognize you better damn well understand the rules you have to operate under and the risk that you're taking, and hedge against that risk. Otherwise, you could suddenly find yourself with a $200,000 lifestyle and a $10,000 income, and those two things don't go together, and you're now the next homeless. So understanding those dynamics right up front and being willing to take the underlying risk becomes important. If I were going to go into this, I would immediately look first for companies that are looking for interns to come in that are doing the digital work right now. Because you want to learn the mechanism. The technology learning will come, but technology is in flux. And if you start with a technology without understanding the process, there's a good chance you're going to dead end. You're going to end up putting your focus into something that may be a flash in the pan, maybe on its way out, may never be coming in. And you need to understand that dynamic before you start committing your time onto any underlying technology. I don't think Avid's going away anytime soon, and I don't think Apple's going away anytime soon either, as far as content platforms. But on the other hand, both are likely to be replaced in the next 10 years, and understanding what they're going to be replaced with is going to be very important. If I was going to try to do this generically, I would probably be spending my time on NVIDIA's Omniverse platform, only because I know the platform fairly well. And I believe that the metaverse concept is eventually going to transform the film industry. The ability to go in and at least use the metaverse for storyboarding is going to be a game changer. And eventually you'll take that storyboarding, that virtual storyboarding in the metaverse, and you'll just flip a switch and send it to render. And then that storyboarding concept will be fully filmed out photorealistically into a film, depending on the access to the underlying technology and the time you've got. It's time against cost. So you may still use a rendering farm today because you need to get to market pretty quick, but clearly the small houses are not using rendering farms. They're using high-end workstations, and you can get decent renders out of a high-end workstation if you've got the time. and those workstations are becoming incredibly powerful. The Threadripper workstations are just amazing in terms of what they can turn out. Things that supercomputers weren't even marginally capable of a decade ago, and that's at a workstation platform that costs well under 30 grand. So the concepts are advancing, but you have to learn the process of because if you don't understand the process, now the process changing and how you want to fit within it, you're going to make a bunch of really bad decisions based on much like I almost did in acting, based on your perception of how things work rather than how they actually work. And you need to have a really good understanding of how they actually work before you step in here. So hang out with people that are doing it. Look for internships in companies that are doing it, mostly small startups. I would stay away from some of the larger firms, though. If I was going to for a larger firm, I'd probably look at Disney. Disney has internships, and they've got broad capabilities in terms of creation, and they're pretty cutting edge. They go from traditional movies all the way to really cutting edge electronics, and they transfer an awful lot of the stuff into the real world and into the parks. And so if you might actually find once you get into this, and I've worked in the parks as well early on, that you might actually rather be a Imagineer in one of the amusement parks than being a set creator, a digital set creator in the movie creation side, because your stuff's going to last longer. I mean, you're creating, and for some engineers and people, it's much more rewarding to create something you can touch and feel than something that only appears digitally. And those are the choices you want to make early on, because once you get down some of these paths, it's going to be relatively difficult to later in life make that flip once you understand it. So understanding what you enjoy, what you want to do, and the downsides of doing it. In fact, I've known a lot of people who got in the film industry thinking they wanted to be actors, that ended up as producers, ended up as directors. Even top name actors that made late in life shifts from acting to directing, or from acting to being writers or being on the production staff, and they're just much happier in a different role. And the sooner you make those decisions, the farther along you're going to be along your path at any given age. And so your first step is to really understand the industry the way it is. Learn how the industry is evolving, and then make your choice in terms of technology, job, training on that learning. You want to make informed choices. I get involved on Quora an awful lot, answering weird questions. And one of the questions I was recently asked had to do with what would happen if two imaginary characters were to have combat, who would win, and my response fits here. And I argued the one that would win was the one that thought strategically, the one that approached the combat with the idea of planning it out ahead of time and thought through all of the elements, as opposed to the one that approached it tactically and simply responded to the underlying event. It helps to have both skill sets, but the strategic approach is always going to do better. And you don't get to strategic without understanding the underlying elements. And so understanding the industry is your very first step. And then you make your choices as to where you want to go. Now, Adam made a bunch of statements with regard to the film industry the way it is. And to a certain degree, he's right. And to a certain degree, he's wrong. The film industry, and I've been in a lot of industries, and I know the film and TV industry at least reasonably well. And to a certain extent, it's not a lot of difference than the tech industry. The tech industry had throughout the book called Brotopia, and also the book Technically Wrong, that talked to Harvey Weinstein kinds of events that are occurring regularly in tech firms, including something called a cuddle puddle that was happening over at Google that I still find kind of disgusting, where managers brought their female employees into these large sex events. And they were required to participate. That's kind of like Weinstein at scale. Regardless of where you go, there are choices you really need to make with regard to who you're working with. And if you ever find yourself working for a manager, I mean, to be clear, there was one instance where I was interviewing for a large tech company, where I walked in and the manager put me through a stress interview. And a stress interview, if you've never been through it, is basically where you sit in front. I've been through them before. I've had a lot of jobs. One of them was a sheriff, deputy sheriff. And in law enforcement, you go through stress interviews. And it makes sense in law enforcement because they want to see if you're going to break, if you're going to lose your temper, And if you're going to do something really stupid, and if you are, they don't want you in law enforcement, something that probably should have been doing here in the U.S. for quite a bit more than they've done it, because it would have prevented a lot of the BLM incidents. But that's a whole different story. But in any case, this manager put me through a stress interview, and that stress interview was, I don't really think you're very smart, man. That's really stupid. I mean, they're very degrading. They're in your face. It's very stressful, and something that's absolutely inappropriate when you're going for a regular job. If that job has that kind of stress, it's being misadvertised. I mean, it was for an internal analyst job at a tech firm. If you're going to walk into a regular job and people are going to treat you like that, you just exit the company. And so instead of even playing for the job, and what really got me wasn't so much the stress test for me as I found out later that the woman that introduced me, that guy after me, had left the thing and run out of his office, and tears, just immediately crushed. And she was an existing employee of the firm that was looking to get the same job, and I just went ballistic. I turned the guy into HR. I escalated up to management. Clearly wasn't going to get the job after that, but I made sure he lost his job, because I believe that behavior is absolutely inappropriate in a manager. But you can run into this at any given point in time, and recognizing it early on and making a decision to escalate, to leave, to exit. Now be careful, because I've also seen cases where this happens and people go off the rails. I was when I came to the Silicon Valley, it was to run HR for a manufacturing firm. And the reason I didn't take that job is my predecessor quit because he had to face down a husband and a shotgun, because his wife's manager had been abusing her for a long period of time, and HR hadn't stepped in. And so he blamed the manager, who wasn't there that day, and decided to escalate to HR, and he's going to kill the head of HR. And I said, I don't need this shit. I mean, I'm out. If it's that endemic in the company, I don't want to deal with that, because I don't want to lose my life in an HR job. And so recognizing that you're stepping into what is a hostile environment and getting the hell out of there can become incredibly important. But not all film crews are like that. I've known a lot of people in acting. I grew up with Jim Nabors, who recently died, who was Gomer Pyle years ago. Those environments, at least what I observed as a child that was coming up, are moderately harsh, but not over the top, and people tended to treat each other with respect. And there are groups where they've gotten together and done a TV show for a long period of time, as I did, and they've remained friends for years afterwards, because they got close. The people treated each other with respect, and you came through. So just because you've got some Harvey Weinsteins out there, both in and outside of the industry, doesn't mean the entire industry is corrupt. It just means we've got a bunch of bad apples, and they're in law enforcement, they're in tech, they're in pharmaceuticals, they're in Hollywood or whatever. But it doesn't mean those industries are endemically bad. It means they have a lot of bad actors, and you as an individual just need to be aware that these bad actors can also exist in education. We've had professors that have done pretty horrible things as well. And recognizing that early on, and keeping yourself from being damaged, and keeping the people you care about from being damaged, becomes an important priority, but not necessarily a part of Hollywood or any other industry. It's a fact of life, sadly enough, and recognizing it early on and being able to mitigate it is an important skill set to develop early.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Rob. Noted. Yeah, I've actually not heard of stress interviews before. That was really interesting. I didn't know that was a name for it. But yeah, that's shocking. I think what Rob said earlier about video games was relevant. The video game industry has grown to rival and even surpass the movie industry in terms of success and profits and such. I think that interactive element is part of the success of video games in the industry. I also think YouTube and Netflix have also been quite disruptive and revolutionary. From what I gather, Netflix has become very saturated with show after show after show. I'm not sure how people manage to keep up with it all, but I think for every one or two show that takes off and becomes popular, there are many series that are dross. But there has been a curious trend within the season TV shows where they have a total of, say, for example, 7 seasons in total, where seasons 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 were gripping, entertaining, brilliant, but the final 1 or 2 seasons were crushing disappointments. I remember how Game of Thrones disappointed fans by taking them on that roller coaster, and more recently, Killing Eve did the same, and fans were crushed. Why this happens, I don't know. It's strange. And going back further, about 15 years, I think the TV show Lost did something similar. And how does that happen? But and YouTube has also been a very interesting phenomenon. I never watched Breaking Bad properly from start to finish, and I still haven't. But I familiarized myself with the storyline, the characters, the plot, all the plot twists and cliffhangers and storylines, just by watching clips from it on YouTube. And it's very addicting. YouTube. It's actually quite scary. It's very easy to just fall into a rabbit hole, and before you know it, you've familiarized yourself with something in a way which feels like cheating. But hey ho, and as Rob said, this is now the age of the vlogger, the video blogger, the YouTuber. So I always wondered whether what made video games such a lucrative industry was the interactive element, whereas watching films and TV shows are more of a passive activity. But that passive viewing activity is still being fulfilled, I suppose, by watching your favorite channels and YouTubers on social media. But even that is still more interactive because you can chat with the person you're watching, even if they're really famous, message in an instant fellow fans and make references to inside jokes and share memes and comments relevant to whatever franchise you're engaged with, none of which you could experience before when watching movies in a theater or a TV show in your living room. But if interactivity was attractive, then surely ARGs, augmented reality games, would have taken off and become more popular than they did. They seemed to be a novelty for a while and then kind of fizzled away. But maybe that genre would be popular again with augmented reality technology, which seems to be in the near future. And as the other speakers have rightly mentioned, one person could do on a laptop with certain software what would require a large crew and millions of pounds or dollars a few decades ago. But would doing something like that by yourself suffer from a lack of creative creativity that came with a film crew in a studio with lots of people together in one environment? Maybe sometimes, who knows? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Michael.
Yeah, I have to go very, very shortly. So yeah, just fantastic conversation and great people you got there, Dr. Sharif. So great seeing you all. So I hope we can connect in some way more around this. So bye, everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. It's really great conversation. Hopefully we can organize more session like this. And those who interested to train our youth community, you can share your syllabus or you can share any kind of solution with World Talent Economy Forums. And we want to be partner of different developed nations corporation. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye.